parts. And, of course, the Redskins making the pilgrimage north up here to take on the Ravens, I should say, the Orioles, the Nationals, playoffs all week long. The undefeated Terps headed to State College this weekend. But the baseball eyes, and I think the sports world eyes, on the north side of Chicago, where the Cubs will once again try to tempt fate and exercise ghosts and demons and Bartman and everything else that goes into that ivy out there. I went out there and spread some good love during the Pearl Jam stint a couple of weeks ago. Dan Roan has been doing this as long as anybody, 33 years now. That's a one-third of a century if you're keeping the math, at WGN in Chicago. I have so many friends out in the Second City, in the Windy City. Many of them who love the Cubs. I've learned to not like the Cubs this year. And you know what? I like Theo, and I love Joe Madden. I just, the fans, it feels like they feel like this is willed to them, like it has to happen. And I've been through the airport in the last few weeks, sir. Dan, you got your hands full if they lose, boy. This is, I can't imagine coming down from that balloon if it doesn't happen this year.
Well, it hasn't happened for 108 years, so we've been through it before. The expectations have been high, albeit not this high. By the way, when you said I've been here for a third of a century, that's how we tell time when we talk about the Cubs, by centuries.
Well, then you're in good company. I don't need to say to you, look, make the case that they can win the World Series. Obviously, any of the teams in the tournament can get hot at the right time. But I think there's a lot more pressure on them, certainly from the fan base. That place is going to be electrified over the weekend. And, I think the other teams were doing their best to stay out of the way. And, of course, they get the wild card winner in this case. But for the Cubs, where's Arrieta? I mean, this time last year, and we saw his act here for the better part of 5 years. You're very welcome for him, by the way. But where is he in his health? And he's certainly logged a lot of innings.
Yeah, that Clevenger-Feldman deal didn't really work out so well for you guys. We were happy to take him off your hands. Actually, he hasn't had the year this season that he had last year, but who has? I mean, really. He was unhittable last year, and he threw a no-hitter earlier in the year this year, so it hasn't been like he's been terrible or anything. They're concerned to some degree that he's lost a little bit off his fastball, but I think what the deal is with him is his control had been off. His command wasn't the same as it was last year when he was winning all those games. So he's kind of dialed it back a little bit, I think, in terms of velocity, and is trying to regain his control and then get ready to cut it loose. But here's what he said Saturday in Cincinnati. I was with those guys this weekend over there, and he said, whoever gets me, the Mets or the Giants in Game 3, is not going to be happy. That's what he said. So he's the ultimate confident guy. So he doesn't think he's got any issues, and self-doubt goes a long way in these games, and he doesn't have any of that. So I don't think anybody's too overly worried about him. The fact is, neither Jake nor John Lester nor Kyle Hendricks yesterday in Cincinnati had very good outings in their final tune-up. So we'll see what happens, but it didn't shake anybody's confidence, and they came back with 4 in the ninth and won the game yesterday anyway. So that's kind of the way things have gone all year.
How long has it felt like spring training? I mean, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? I mean, really, this has really been about Madden lining up pitchers for the most part. I mean, there's really been no threat anywhere. I mean, I was out there for those Pearl Jam shows 6 weeks ago, and they were just counting down the days till Friday, right?
Well, if you want to be ridiculous about it, they were 25-6 in the first week of May. It was over then. They just had to, keep to it. They did have a little pre-All-Star break slump. I think the lead went from 10 or 11 games down to 6 or 5.5 maybe, and then as soon as the break was over, it went right back up to double figures, and I think it ended up around 17.5 or something. So, it's been ridiculous, a total runaway. I'm not sure. It's probably happened since, but the last time it happened in Chicago was the '83 White Sox, who won the West in the American League by 20. Beyond that, nothing like this has happened in Chicago since. So it's a big deal, and all the little minutia things are being scrutinized by every Cub fan, especially with all the social media and everything. But I don't think anybody's too worried about what might happen. It is true, though, the 5-game series is the toughest one to win. And if it's the Giants, I don't think the Cubs are too thrilled about seeing Bumgarner and Cueto up there at the top of their rotation.
Yeah, everybody's got sort of a rooting interest on the other side as well, and I'm sure the Rangers feel the same way and sitting around and waiting. You mentioned the White Sox, and, I give memories of Ron Kittle in Memorial Stadium and a young Tony La Russa running around and Lamar Hoyt and all that. So I've been there and done that with the White Sox, but a really great juxtaposition that the White Sox steal the headlines over the weekend by sort of firing their legendary player-manager, over the last quarter of a century. Robin Ventura has been involved there. And I guess that was coming. I mean, I saw a game on the South Side. I love the elotes, by the way. And the statue of my cousin in center field, my name on the wall, is not bad either. So I do love the South Side. But, I was out there, and that can only go on so long, right, when the Cubs are the toast of the town and the White Sox can't get 3,000 people to come out and watch them play.
Yeah, it's rough. You have to win, especially down there. You have to win to get people to come out, and they just haven't done it. Robin was, I think, 85 and 77 his first year, and then 4 straight losing seasons to follow. When they hired Rick Renteria as a quote-unquote bench coach in the spring, I think everybody saw the writing on the wall here. And truth be told, management kind of chickened out on this, didn't really fire him. They said they're going to leave the decision up to Robin, and Robin said after the game yesterday he was not going to come back. So they're trying to make it out like it was his choice, which probably is not true at all. But I think when Renteria came on, everybody knew that if they didn't have a winning season, Robin would be gone and Ricky be stepping in. And they got off to a great start, too. I mean, they were like 23-10, and then all of a sudden they stopped hitting, and the pitchers were pitching pretty well still, but they couldn't win any games, and then attendance started falling off, and, it just kind of a death spiral down there, and that's kind of what happened today.
Well, the crazy thing with Guillen is that it was always crazy, when he was around there, but they won. And they certainly mattered, right? I mean, they were the side of town that gave you a chance to win when he was around.
Well, true. And, hey, I'll tell you this, for all the antics and everything, Ozzie Guillen is a terrific baseball mind and a really good baseball manager. You wondered at some point if they might not turn to him and have him come back, but I think that would have been just too crazy for the White Sox to deal with. But I'd be surprised if he wants to do it. He still lives in town, so I see him around every now and then, and I don't think he's too thrilled about coming back to manage again, but he's a good one. And it was more relevant then, only because he was in the headlines for all kinds of different stuff all the time. Not all of it good, but he was in the headlines, so they were relevant when he was managing.
So how did the Cubs screw this up, Dan? I mean, and dare I say, I watch Bartman. I've seen all this stuff over the years, but what's going to have to go wrong for them here? Because it feels like they have the hitters, they have relative health, they've had a long time to set this up. They got a genius manager who's, trying to push the boulder up the mountain on his own behalf for his own legacy. And I love Joe Madden. But this does feel like it's going to be a little heavier boulder than maybe other organizations have this time of year.
Well, yeah, it's 108 years in the making, so, it's heavy, all right. But the one thing Joe has done above all else is deflect all that stuff. He's got a plan. He outlined it in spring training last year, what he wanted his players to do, and they followed the plan, and that's pretty much all they care about. They don't care who they play. They don't care who's pitching. They don't care about any of that stuff. They just want to take care of their own business. And the youth on this baseball team, I think, makes it easier for them to ignore all that curse stuff and all that baloney.
None of these guys have done anything, right?
No,
literally.
no.
Zobrist has been in some postseason. Last year they had their couple, but none of these guys have achieved and gotten a ring. And Madden did it in Anaheim, of course, but on his own accord came very close in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Zobrist won one last year. Who else?
I have to go down
David
the list.
Ross won one.
Lester with the Red Sox,
and
right?
Lester and Lackey, of course. But beyond those guys, really not a whole lot going on in terms of postseason, which may not be a bad thing. They had their chance last year to see what it was all about. They went dry with the bats when they played the Mets, who just dominated them. That's one issue. If you're looking for one thing to nitpick about, they have shown the tendency at some points during the season to leave a lot of guys in scoring position on base. They were doing it yesterday until the end of the game. But that's one thing. They haven't always come through in the clutch, and yet they've had so many comeback wins, it's hard to even remember some of that stuff. It's been unbelievable. I have to say that much. And everybody in Chicago is hoping it lasts for another month or so.
Yeah, from the Baltimore perspective, the whole Dexter Fowler thing was bizarre. We were in Indianapolis at the Combine when that thing broke that he was going to sign with the Orioles. Next thing you know, he's not even in the state of Florida. He's in Arizona at Cubs camp. That turned out to be a real nice little piece that the Cubs added in the offseason that I don't know that they really believe they needed at that time, right? I mean, they weren't in great pursuit of him, and the next thing you know, his loyalty said, yeah, I'll come back on a one-year flyer. He probably made himself a lot of money.
Well, I think the Cubs had a price in mind for him, and he wasn't willing to meet it at that time. There were a lot of teams. The White Sox were actually after him, too. They needed a center fielder. So I was actually at White Sox camp when the news broke that Fowler just showed up across the valley over at Mesa. So we all jumped in our cars and raced across the valley to get back over there to see what was going on, and talked to Kenny Williams, the Sox president, before we left. He said, the Cubs signed who? Because I think they thought they still had a chance at him. And he said, what are they going to do now, win 104 games? And they came up one short, 103. But Dex is terrific. He's been the table setter. When he was injured is when they kind of had their little swoon. And when he came back, bam, right back to it. So he's been a big part of it. He was last year and all year this year. And he's got an option for next year, and I'd be surprised if he didn't come back. I mean, these guys have a party after every victory. They have a place tarped off and set up at Wrigley Field on their way back from the dugout to the clubhouse, their new clubhouse. They didn't want them screwing that up all year, so they built them a place where they can party, and they go in there for a half an hour after every game and just blow it out, disco ball, smoke machine, all that kind of stuff. Then they meet the media, and then they go on their way and come back and try to do it again the next day. It's really nuts. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Dan Roan, he's seen a lot of things in his third of a century as a sportscaster, WGN out in Chicago. You can follow him at DRoan. That's ROAN. Last thing for you, and I've saved the worst for last. We're still kind of a football town around here, Dan, in Baltimore, and we've got the Ravens and the Redskins playing this week, and I've been down to Soldier Field where the Bears have been substantial and have mattered. Dude, what is going on here? I mean, it's a good thing that the Cubs are sort of taking the eyes away from the Bears at this point. This is not going to be a real good Bears season, huh?
Well, they're 1-0 this week, so they got that going for them. But yeah, it's been terrible. And I'll say this from our perspective, it's been very tough to cover them, and not because the players are bad guys, but because the coaches are so paranoid about releasing any smidge of information about anything. I've never in 33 years seen anything quite like what's going on up there. John Fox and that crew are as closed-mouthed when it comes to the media as anybody. You wouldn't even believe some of the stuff that's said in post-game and on Mondays after games about what happened on the field or who's injured or who's not injured. It's insane. But having said that, they've had so many injuries. It's hard to believe they actually won the game yesterday. Like I said, I was in Cincinnati with baseball, so I didn't see the game, but somehow they pulled it out. So good for them. They needed a lift, and they got one, and now they have the Colts this week. They don't look very good either, so maybe the Bears can pull one out again.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of good football players right now. I look up and down their roster, and it's kind of easy to see why they're 1-3.
Well, they got a couple of game changers, maybe one, really, in Alshon Jeffrey. But, we're doing Brian Hoyer right now at quarterback. Cutler's out. Hoyer was great yesterday. I think he was 28 for 36, 300 something, and a couple of touchdowns, no picks. So Fox did say today that whoever is playing the best will be the quarterback. I don't think Cutler's quite ready to come back from this thumb injury yet, but he may be in a battle for his job at this point.
Most maligned guy in modern Chicago sports history, is it Jay Cutler? I mean, look, the basketball team has won plenty. The hockey team has won. South Side, North Side, fine, but I don't know that either of those franchises sort of had a lifer GOAT. Cutler's got to be right up there with the modern era, right? This century.
Well, they've been to one playoff game, I think, since he's been here. He's just not. He's not a media-friendly guy and doesn't care too much about it. He's married to Kristen Cavallari, and she's got the Hollywood background, and they've seen plenty of that stuff over their lifetimes, and I don't really blame him for not wanting to really get involved with the press and all that kind of stuff, but you have to be at least civil to people, and he's had a tough time doing that in some cases. So his reputation around town is not very good. His demeanor on the sideline has been questioned by a lot of people, fans and media alike. And, not a bad guy, I don't think at all, but just not a real likable guy. And he hasn't done himself any favors. And plus, if you win the games and act like that, no problem. But they haven't won very many games.
Dan, I don't know if you have streets big enough there in Chicago to house a Cubs parade, but time will tell whether you're going to have that responsibility in 4 weeks. It is a great time of the year. It's going to be a great tournament all the way around, I think, American and National League. I really appreciate the visit and your time. Great having you on.
Hey, anytime.
You got it. Dan Roan, longtime sportscaster, WGN in Chicago, Illinois. You can follow him at DRoan, ROAN. He has a lovely picture of a swamp, a creek, a golfer, and the White House. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app, becoming crystal clear from wherever you are. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox digitally, of course, each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. You'll be the smartest fan in your circle. Dennis is here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5 on the SSV on WNST. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming video live on Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.